Welcome to a live edition of Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Geri Simon, a League member and your host for the program. Normally, this program, we hope to do another candidate forum in our series, but due to some scheduling difficulties, we're not able to do that this evening. So we thought we would talk with you about voter services that the League of Women Voters provides to voters and to help you be ready and willing to go vote on Election Day. We have a team of League members with us this evening in the studio to talk about and answer your questions. Do call in your questions. The number is on the screen. And I will introduce those members to you now. First of all, we have Ann Chalson, our Vice President, and our Maryanne Rouse is our Director of Voter Services. Joanna Lindberg is a member of our Get Out the Vote Committee, and Carolyn Thiele is our Director of the Get Out the Vote Committee. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start out with talking about pretty much the backbone of our voter services, and that's voter registration. So Maryanne, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd like to. Let's start with whether or not you can vote. It's pretty simple, but necessary to know that, first of all, you have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be 18 years old by Election Day in November, which is this year, November 8th. You have to reside in the state of Nebraska in order to vote here. You may not have been convicted of a felony, but there are certain rights that ex-felons have, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, something of which we feel, I personally feel very committed to letting people know about that. And finally, and I'm sure hopefully not anyone listening is in this category, but if you've been officially found to be mentally incompetent, then you can't vote, and I suppose that's a good idea. How to register and where? You can register at a number of places, and I'd like to just put in a plug here for the current election commissioner. We'll be talking about that later in the panel. But there's been an effort on the part of the office this year to really expand the opportunities for registration for people. So simply, you can vote at the Douglas County register at the election commissioner's office. The address, which is 225 North 115th Street in Omaha, and actually it's 115th just north of Dodge, a few blocks. You can register at any Omaha Public Library, at the county treasurer's office when you apply for a new driver's license, or if you're out of Omaha, certain city clerk's offices in the city halls in the towns of Ralston, Bennington, Waterloo, and Valley. And at voter registration events, which are publicized and on the election commissioner's website, for example, or on the league's website if the league has scheduled some events. Talk a little bit about when you have to register. You can register outside of the election commissioner's office up until October 21st, and that day any off-site registrations have to be delivered to the election commissioner's office by the end of the working day, which I believe is 6 o'clock. You could still register at the election commissioner's office up until October 28th. So those are two dates to keep in mind if you're needing still to be registered, or if you have some things you want changed on your registration for this year.
Maryanne, do you want to mention online vote registration?
Yes.
That's new.
Right. You can register online, and I'm looking to get it right here. And it's very simple. Go on the election commissioner's website, and it leads you right through to how you can register. I haven't done that. Maybe, Ann, you know more about that.
All you have to have is a valid Nebraska driver's license, and you can do that to change your address or any other changes you need to make. The only change you cannot make on there is a name change.
Anybody who should be voting and has the right to vote and has the right to be involved in that Citizen Act. And So what a lot of people don't know, however, including people that would be affected by this personally, is that if you have been convicted of a felony and you finish your term and you finish your parole or whatever, once 2 years have elapsed since the time you've had any papers to do with your imprisonment, then you're eligible to vote. And I think it's quite important that we get that word out, and in fact, Ann will talk a bit about that now.
I think we have a graphic it's going to go up on your screen that summarizes information that Ann's going to talk about with regarding ex-felons.
Okay, most ex-felons are eligible to vote in the state of Nebraska. In 2005, the legislature passed a law that said that anyone who was an ex-felon, that is, had completed a sentence, had completed parole, and was 2 years off paper, which is 2 years past the sentence, is automatically eligible to vote. All they don't need any special paperwork. They simply need the last 4 digits of a social security number or driver's license number. The Nebraska law restored voting rights to felons 2 years after they completed an entire sentence during that time. If you're convicted of a misdemeanor, you are eligible to vote, and that means people also waiting to be tried in jail. The same is also true with a felony. If you are accused of a felony but not yet convicted, you're still eligible to vote, even if jail awaiting trial. You can register to vote at the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Election Commission, by mail or online at www.sos Secretary of State Nebraska.us, or the voter registration drives in the community. And we usually have additional forms out there telling people all the information in case you have a friend or family member who's interested in this.
Okay, great. So the biggest thing then is that ex-felons don't need to show any paperwork, anything like that. They just register as anyone else does.
They register just like anyone else.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know.
Can I add just a couple things?
Sure.
Sometimes I think people may be reluctant to vote because they have questions about whether or not they'll look, if they have a question, they won't know who to ask or something like that. I think that I'd encourage people to go, and if they have questions, ask them, because the people who are there, that's what they're there for, is to help you. You can also bring your children into that ballot cubicle with you. You can bring your voter's guide if you've made notes on it. You can bring material like that. You can't campaign by wearing a button for any candidate yourself at the time, but you can have those helps, if you will, and that's just fine. No one will say, of course, no one has any kind of right to ask you how you voted or try to look at how you voted or anything like that. And the final thing is, if you have some disability that is a sight problem perhaps, please inquire with the Election Commission people there about what helps they might have to help you overcome your disability so that you can register your vote there. I mean, not register, but you could fill out your ballot and get it counted.
Maryanne, I've also learned that you can if you come up to your polling place and need help, you can just be in your car and they'll bring the ballot to you.
That's great.
Okay,
yeah.
that's good. So customer service and voter service at the polling place. Okay, we have our first question from a viewer. This is an excellent question because the viewer asks, what kind of ID do I need when I go to the polls to vote? So who wants to take that one? Ann, do you want to talk about that?
You don't need any ID whatsoever, except the first time. If you filled out your voter registration form and simply mailed it into the office, the first time you go to vote, they will ask you for something with your address and name on it, which could be a bill, it could be a checkbook, it could be a receipt from where you work, and that's simply to verify that where you live and your name, that you actually live where you said you did. After that, there is never any form that's asked you for any kind of an identification. In very rare instances, if there's a problem with that you've had with an identity theft or something, they may actually have a note on there, but I have not seen it happen, that they want to see identification if you've asked the Election Commission to ask for that.
And Nebraska is one of the states that does not require any voter ID when you go to the polls.
Nor do we need any identity when you come in to register.
Right, okay.
One other thing about online, if that's your thing, and it's most of our thing now, whether we want it to be or not, I think, but we offer, you can go online and find under vote411.org, you can put in your own address, and what you'll see that comes back at you once it's loaded with all the information, and they're working on that right now, will be your ballot, the ballot that you would have going into the polls. So, for example, if you live in a certain city council district, it would show what those candidates are for that district. And so you can get a familiarity with the ballot that way. And it's really a slick deal. Vote411.org.
Okay. We were talking about voter registration and all the opportunities that we're trying to provide for people to do that, and a big event is coming up in September. That's National Voter Registration Day. So Ann and Maryanne, do you want to talk about that event and what that means, how we're helping voters on that day?
Go ahead.
Well, on September 29th, nationally there is a voter registration day where all different groups get out and try to register as many voters as they can on that one day. We usually do it at most of the junior colleges. We'll do it at UNO campus and a few other locations, a couple of the libraries. We haven't set all the locations yet. We start at 10 in the morning and go to about 2 in the afternoon, and see how many people we can register. But it is a nationwide event that is put together every year.
Okay, and we will be at quite a few different locations.
We'll be at probably 8 or 9 different locations at least.
Okay, and we can probably put that up on our website at some point by the end of the week, or once that's settled, where people can
Once
find
we have
us.
all the locations settled, yeah.
Okay, great. That sounds really good.
One more thing.
Yes, go on.
Is if you need a ride to the polls, that's no excuse. We know of 3 people that are providing rides to the polls. Of course, Warren Buffett, you know about him probably. The Urban League of Nebraska, and I have a phone number for that. It's 402-575-0148. No, 0144, sorry. So let me tell you that again. Urban League of Nebraska, 402-575-0144. And Heartland Workers Center at 402-933-6095. So if you find yourself on Voters' Day and your ride falls through or something like that, then you can go take one of these opportunities to get a ride to the polls. And we're hoping to give as many people rides as possible, because there again, the goal here is to get as many people voting as we can.
Okay, great. We talked a little bit about early voting, and I think we wanted to mention that there are about 9 different drop boxes that are located throughout the city that the Election Commission commissioner has provided, and some additional ones this time. And those are, some places are libraries. We have a graphic to show you of what a drop box looks like. So if you're looking for one at one of the locations, you can go to it's on your screen now. That's what a drop box looks like. If you go to a location, you find the address and you don't see it, go inside if it's a library and ask them where to find the drop box, and they'll be more than willing to help you do that. Again, if you applied and you got your early ballot by mail, you got to put it in one, either mail it back with a postage stamp, put it in one of the drop boxes, or take it directly to the Election Commission office on 115th and approximately 115th and Dodge. You can't take it to your polling place on Election Day. Okay, let's see. Another question from a viewer. Let's see. Oh, the first time I went to vote, there were other people on the ballot I didn't know anything about. Can I leave that part of the ballot blank? And the answer is yes, you don't. But what we're going to tell you is that if you look at the League's Voter's Guide that we're going to talk about a little bit later, We provide information on the candidates who are on the ballot in Douglas County, and our vote.411.org also provides information. So you can go there and hopefully learn about candidates and be able to decide that you can vote for a particular office if you use those resources that we help you with. So, let's talk about registering high school students that are eligible. Carolyn and Joanna, do you want to talk about, you've been working on that, so that's service for young voters.
We have been having a great time reaching out to these young future voters. We got a grant from the National League of Women Voters because in 2012, they found that less than 50% of 18-year-olds had registered to vote. And that is a very large number of 18-year-olds who could have voted in that election. So we really wanted to try to correct that in this community. So we have reached out to the Omaha Public Schools, high schools. We did classes, in government classes, where we did some education on the basics of voting, as well as actually registered any students in that classroom who were eligible to vote and wanted to register to vote that day. Between those registration drives, we also did some all-school registration drives in the cafeterias. We were at Metro Community College campuses twice, and with all those efforts in the spring, we registered 573 young people in the Omaha area, so we felt really good about that.
And our plan is to do that again this fall, and at the high schools. We'll be speaking to seniors again in all the OPS high schools that invite us in, and we have found from the evaluations that we've gotten from the teachers and from the students that they really appreciate it, and it gives them a chance to kind of think about what is a Democrat Party, what's a Republican Party, how do I, when I register, how do I choose what I want to be when I vote.
And that's a good thing to mention too, that you don't have to register with the party. You can vote. You can register as nonpartisan.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Or libertarian. Libertarian.
Yes.
The choices are nonpartisan, Libertarian, Republican, or Democrat.
Yes.
And then we explained to the students that in the primary election, if they are nonpartisan, they would have to ask for a ballot to vote for a congressman, and that they would not in a primary be able to vote for a president.
Okay. But the great thing for these high school students then who you've registered is that every one of them can, on November 8th this year, they can vote for the first time.
Well, the
Most
good thing
likely.
was, we did this registration before the primary in May. And even if some of those young people had not yet turned 18, because they could be turning 18 by November 8th, register, they were still going to be able to vote in the primary on May 10th. Mm-hmm. So we really encouraged them, even if they were only 17, to use this opportunity to get out and vote for the first time.
Okay, great. I think one thing we want to talk about is our voter education. And our program, Go Vote Omaha, has been on since the last fall, I think we started. 7:30 Tuesday nights, and we've been doing shows about election issues, how to register to vote, how to vote. We've done things, programs on redistricting, Muslims and Islam, because we realized our voters and a lot of us didn't know a whole lot about our neighbors of that faith and culture. We've done things on political messaging, how to watch a debate, and so all those programs are available on our YouTube channel, so you can view those at any time once they've aired. We're doing candidate forums too, as I said. We've already, the next one live will be August 29th. That's going to be the Millard School Board election. But we have MUD and OPPD, many of the legislative districts for the unicameral. And we're going to have State Board of Education and the one Douglas County board race where there are 2 candidates in that district. So those will all be upcoming on our program. We also wanted to talk about that there's a ballot proposal on the ballot this November, and that's on whether to retain the repeal of the death penalty that the unicameral passed in 2015. The League has done a series of programs about the death penalty. And we did 3 programs. One is about morality and justice of the death penalty, one on lethal injection and the death penalty, and one on religion and the death penalty. And this is where we need to talk about and remind our viewers about the League of Women Voters. We are nonpartisan when we are talking about political parties or candidates. We never support or oppose political parties or candidates. but we do study issues and take positions and action on them, and the death penalty is one of those. So we are urging voters to vote to retain on the ballot when you go to the polling booth, vote to retain the repeal, because we do support keeping the abolishment of the death penalty in Nebraska. And if you're confused by the ballot language, which some people are, it's written in a rather confusing fashion. If you want to support and keep the death penalty off the books in Nebraska, keep it that way, the way the unicameral voted to abolish it, you vote to retain. That's all you really need to remember on that, on Election Day. And then also, for more information on the death penalty, the League is doing a public forum that anyone can attend on September 8th. It'll be at 7 o'clock, and that's at the Citizen Engagement Center, the Weiss Citizen Engagement Center at UNO. So anyone can attend that, and we're going to try to have that one video recorded as well to show later. So, and that kind of brings us, we talked a little bit briefly about the Voter's Guide and Vote 411. So let's talk about that service a little bit more in depth. And Maryanne, do you want to talk about what our plans are for that voter guide?
I can start perhaps, and Ann will chime in. But the Voter's Guide is one of the mainstays of the League for years. And it's different than many other Voter's Guides who take a position and publish the information in such a way as to persuade people to vote for a certain candidate or party. As Geri just said, we don't do that. So what we do in our Voter's Guide is nonpartisan, and our position doesn't follow in there at all. It's what we do is we contact everyone who's running for office, and we give them a series of questions which we have painstakingly, I might say, come up with for the various offices and so on. And that gets printed just exactly as they send it to us. And then this year we are, in addition to having the Voter's Guide, as we always have had the past in English, we will be providing it in Spanish as well. And we'll be publishing it in the Reader, the Omaha Reader, and then you'll also have an opportunity to get freestanding copies in many places, all the libraries. If you have church members that want to stop by the office or just give us a call and say they want some Voter's Guides, we're more than happy to bring them. We publish quite a few. And they're there for people to read and become informed voters. And as I said before, what you read about candidates there is what they have submitted to us. And so if, for example, it says no reply received, that's exactly what it means. They get information about our deadline, which is obvious, we have to keep to that. And if they don't come through with it, although we follow them, try to call them and so on, and if they don't, then that's what we're left to publish. But it's a source that's unlike any other Voter's Guide that you will read, as I said, because there's no side to it. It's really there for public education.
Okay, and we might mention also that a PDF of that Voter's Guide will be available on our League's website too, so you could just look at it on the computer if that's more convenient. Mm-hmm. So if you go to omahallwv.org, you'll find it there once it's published.
And also with the Vote 411, because it's an online, it will have the same questions, but it may have a few other questions as well for each of the voters, since it takes up, we don't have to worry about printing it, and there's no cost involved in the extent of it. We will also have information on the judges, and you're going to have the information for that.
Yes, that's one of the things that we get asked quite a lot about. You will see on your ballot to vote for judges, for retaining them in office. And the Nebraska State Bar Association has done recently, they've done an electronic survey of lawyers who have actually experienced being in a particular judge's courtroom, and asked them to do a performance evaluation of those judges who are up for retention. And so they have published the results of their survey, and it's available to you by looking at, it's www.nebar.com, the Nebraska State Bar Association. And we'll also have that on our website, that information, so that you'll be able to go directly and find that report. So that is the way to get information about judges. Okay, another question from our viewers. Okay. How can I, this person wants to know how they can help write questions for the candidates when we provide them in our forums. You can certainly send them to us if you have suggestions for questions. You can go vote Omaha at gmail.com. You can make comments on our page, on our Facebook page, and email. You could call into our league office as well and give us a suggestion for questions. Lots of different ways if you want to, something that you really would like answered by the candidates. Okay, and then this one is about when will the voter guide be ready? It's going to be it should be mid-October or by the beginning?
It should be.
The reader edition in October?
It should go out in the reader in early October.
Okay. And so once it does go out, we'll have it immediately ready.
And going up online is just a matter of the timing of as we get the answers to questions, they go online. So the online vote411.org is pretty much a live operation, so we're not bound by any deadlines as far as getting information into it.
Okay. And Vote for One, we might mention also that there's an opportunity to answer maybe a few more questions than we can do on a hard copy printed guide. So do you want to speak to that a little bit, Ann?
Well, because it's online, we're not limited by space, so we usually have a couple of more questions for each of the candidates. I might mention also that all candidates are asked the same questions. They don't get specific questions. We don't devise questions specifically for one candidate or the other. They all get the same questions for that particular office. The online one also will have the information on the judges with a link, and we'll have information on the ballot measures. Okay. It also, when you go in there, it will tell you where your voting location is. So you can go in and put your address and your zip code, and it will tell you where you go to vote.
Okay, and that's important because we have 228 polling places in Douglas
correct.
County. So, okay.
And if you're a new person that's just registering this time, or you've changed party or something else for registration, then we have to give them a few weeks to work on getting this to us. But you will receive a voter's card in the mail, and that will tell you what your precinct is and the address and so on. So if you're deciding that you're going to vote at the polls, you'll know where to go. And it also, I think, has the districts you're in and so on.
Yes,
I believe.
There's a copy of what the voter information card looks like.
Of what it looks like, and this, you can't see this, but it has your name and address, and it has the polling place, it has the party, ward, precinct, and so on, and then it also has district information, so what city council district you're in, for example, or legislative district or whatever. So you'll be getting that if you register this season.
And I'd like to add that that postcard will go out to all registered voters in the end of August. And on that postcard, there's an opportunity to pull off a section of it and fill out an application for early voting. And you can mail that in to the election commissioner, or we've got the email addresses of the two Sarpy and Douglas County Election Commission that you can send the early voting application to. And it's a very simple way to vote. It gives you time to look at the ballot at your leisure and make a decision based on information you've gathered, your voter's guide. So we really encourage our citizens to take advantage of the vote by mail early voting.
Okay. Let's, Carolyn and Joanna, let's talk about the efforts for what you're doing to help voters with the Get Out the Vote Committee, and talk about that.
Well, the League has for a long time done voter registration and really reached out to voters in that way. But what we discovered when we looked at the statistics coming out of the last election was the percentage of registered voters that actually come out to vote. And it is lower in the primary this year. It's also lower in a year when we don't have a presidential election. On years that we are electing a president, we have the best voter turnout. But we were concerned that when you look at those percentages, they're really not where we should be if we're really going to make democracy work. So we decided to organize our committee to really reach out to you to make sure people had the information they needed to be able to vote. So we've got a committee that's working actively on being in the community, not only registering people, but giving them information and engaging them in thinking about voting.
Okay. And talk about the toolkit that you developed to help voters and organizations, businesses help encourage and help their workers to go vote.
Can I tell you the story about how we came up with this first?
Sure.
We were doing a class at Metro, and a diehard voter, an older Metro student, said to us after the presentation that it was such a shame that it was right after Halloween we were doing this presentation. He said, as a culture, we spend so much time and money on Halloween, and we don't do anything to celebrate the fact that we're a democracy and we have an election day. And I thought about that and I said, what a great idea. So we are now celebrating democracy on Election Day, and we've kind of declared it. And we created a toolkit that we sent out to employers around the city. We found lists of HR directors in major corporations. We shared it with the Chamber of Commerce in Omaha and in Sarpy County, asked them to be able to publish this in their workforce so that people could have, you could have good information about how to register, where you could find your polling place, how to make changes in your registration, just kind of the basics of what people need to know to be ready to vote.
And to make it fun, that, you know, to have some kind of contests at your workplace. Those people that come back with "I voted today" stickers might, you know, get their name in a drawing for a prize, or encourage people to wear red, white, and blue, and have prizes for the best color costume, and just get people revved up and excited about voting. Okay.
And what about the person who says, "Oh, that's all wonderful, but my vote doesn't really count"? Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, there's different things we've said to high school kids. We'll say, you know, when Warren Buffett votes, does his vote count more than your vote? And the kids kind of look at you like, I guess not, you know. But that's hard for them to appreciate, that the power of their vote. And I know we've talked about, there have been some close elections in Nebraska where a person, you know, maybe 13 or 14 vote difference between a legislative district in South Omaha this last primary. And just if they had come, they may have made that difference to get the person they wanted elected. So there really are small margins sometimes where decisions are made. And I just learned that if it's a tie, that the Election Commission has to toss a coin and make what heads or tails, and then that person wins the office. So
a game of chance determines the outcome of the election. So that's a powerful example to show how your vote does count.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
Okay. We have a couple questions from viewers. One is, has the league done any research on voter fraud? And let's see, Ann, I don't think we specifically have. There are lots of other organizations that have and have found very little evidence of it. I believe we asked our own Douglas County Election Commission about any voter fraud in Douglas County, and they really didn't have any instances that they could point to. So the likelihood that there is any fraud is very, very low. So, and then, another question we have is, what is a provisional ballot? So do you want to, who wants to talk about that one?
If you show up at your election place and you're not on the list, and there is a list that's printed out of everyone who's a registered voter in that district who is eligible to vote. And then beside people who have a mail-in ballot, it will mark you as already having a ballot so that you don't actually vote a second time. If you get there and you find that you're not on that list, there are a couple of different reasons. You may actually be in the wrong voting location, and they will tell you where to go, that you can call a number and find out where it is that you're supposed to be. If for some reason you're not on that list or you think you should be, you can ask for a provisional ballot. And this may happen too if you had a mail-in ballot and you lost it. You never mailed it, you just lost it. You vote provisionally, it goes in, it's counted separately. They will check against their incoming votes to make sure that you didn't actually vote in another place, you didn't forget and mail in that ballot, so your ballot's not counted twice. And at that point, they will count that. But all of those provisional ballots are accounted for in one way or another.
Another way that provisional ballot can happen is if you go to your polling place and they say, you know, we looked and you're not even registered to vote. On that provisional ballot, there is the opportunity to write all of the information that goes on a voter registration. So you really can vote that day even though you weren't registered, but it will, you know, it's counted later after they have a chance to verify.
Okay, thanks for answering that one. Do you want to talk a little bit about our collaboration with other groups on getting out the vote? And maybe about your red zone map. We have a graphic on that, so
yes,
if we can put that up.
If you look at the graphic, you'll notice if that's the map of Douglas County, the turnout in 2014 election, we had an important ballot at that time. We elected a new governor, we elected a United States senator, and the minimum wage were all issues on that ballot. If you look on the eastern side of Douglas County, there's a large red zone that pretty much goes from north to south Omaha. That is less than 30% of the registered voters turned out to vote. The yellow is less than 40%. So that was really the map that drew us into, we need to really encourage voter participation in addition to voter registration. And so in doing that, we reached out to other nonpartisan groups that are working on getting out the vote in that red zone. So we started originally working with the North Omaha Voter Project that's been active in North Omaha for a number of years. We also are working with the Heartland Workers Center, which is doing a lot of work in South Omaha. Just this year, we've connected with the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, which is also working kind of citywide through churches. We've also been working with Nebraskans for Civic Reform, who are doing education about voting rights. And we've just recently become part of the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table, where it is really helping us with some infrastructure, with data, strategies, and those kinds of things. And it's really supporting all of our nonpartisan efforts to get out the vote.
And there will be a Talk of the Town presentation on September 22nd at the CASA building from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we're inviting nonprofits to come and learn about what these organizations that Carolyn mentioned are doing to get out the vote, and to let nonprofit organizations know what role they can play in registering voters.
Okay, great. And I think we have another question that we've come in from a viewer, so we'll take that before. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question. Is my information with the Election Commission public? My party seemed to know all about the fact that I had an early ballot at my house last time. So, who wants to? Ann, do you want to take that one too?
The information on your ballot, it's public information, so people know that you're registered. How to contact you, however, if you check the little box beside your phone number or address, they do not publish that information, or they don't publish your phone number or your email address, rather. Your location, your home address is published. When you apply for an early ballot, and a lot of times your political party will call you ahead of time and ask you if you want an early ballot, and they will mail out that form to fill out and send in. And they will start calling you to remind you that you haven't mailed it in yet, because they can go through periodically and check, and they ask the election office for that information. But all they know, they have no idea of how you voted. They merely know that you've requested an early ballot and whether or not you've turned it in.
Okay, so the sanctity of the voting process
The
is
sanctity
preserved.
of the vote itself is private. The fact that you did request a ballot, though, is public information.
Okay, great. That answers that. And we also wanted to mention, you mentioned working with Nebraskans for Civic Reform, and they do have a voter protection project and a hotline that we want to give the number for. If you have any problems on election day, you suspect that your rights are being violated, that you were told something that was incorrect, you can call their election protection hotline, and that number is 402-904-5191. And that's Nebraska Nebraska Civic Reform, Nebraskans for Civic Reform Election Protection Hotline.
The other thing I want to mention, on Election Day, Heartland Worker Center has a lot of bilingual staff who speak Spanish, and they are going to be assisting the Election Commission on Election Day. So if people are Spanish speaking and they have questions, they can call the Election Commission and there will be somebody there who speaks Spanish. They're also working with the Election Commission to make sure that poll workers in polls where there are going to be a lot of people who are Spanish speakers, that there will be Spanish speaking poll workers there as well.
And we'll give that number too for the Election Commission office. It's 402-444-8683, or 444-VOTE is the word there too to remember. And you have developed a little reminder system, and you want to talk about the chalking program. That this is our service to sort of help voters, to remind them that Election Day is coming up and that they should get out there and exercise their right to vote.
We have. This is new this year. You are going to be seeing throughout the city in various locations a chalk message on the sidewalks that says, "Be a voter." We're also going to have some that say, "Go vote Omaha." And right now we've gotten agreement from the Department of Motor Vehicles, so we'll be putting chalk messages on their sidewalks. The Omaha Public Libraries. We have a group of students at Metro Community College who are in an art class who are going to be designing some additional stencils for us. So the one you see on your screen will not be the only one that will be around, so you can have fun kind of trying to decide where you're going to find our stencils.
Okay. And then is there a text messaging system that people could take advantage of if they would like a message sent to them on Election Day? Or?
Yes, but we don't have a number for it to give them right now. But we are going to have a text reminder system, so they could go to our website, in a couple weeks, and we will have a number up, and we'll publish it on our Facebook page, where there will be a number they can text with a keyword, and that will get them on our list, and then they will get reminders that will tell them. It will tell you our voter's guide is available. It will remind you about Election Day, when the deadline to get an early ballot request in. Some of those key dates we'll be sending reminders about.
And also somebody could send an email message to omahalwv@gmail.com and say they would like to be added to that messaging system.
They could just send us their cell phone number, and we'll add it to the list.
Great. That sounds really good.
And something I don't think we've said yet, but maybe some of you aren't sure. Polls open at 8 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. on Election Day. And I don't think they'll open any moments earlier or any moments later than 8 o'clock. So
unless there's a line, and then they have to honor that.
Right, they have to honor it if you're in the line.
Yeah.
If you're in line at 8
And
o'clock.
wouldn't that be wonderful if we had lines? Yeah, that would be great.
And if
My
you want
personal goal.
And if you want to avoid a line, voting early by mail is the way to do that.
Yes.
It's the best.
The best.
I want to mention there's 3 states that only voting happens by mail now. Washington State, Oregon, and Colorado. And Minnesota has increased their voting significantly by doing vote by mail. So it is something that could really increase the voter turnout.
And we have some interest in that in Douglas County, exploring that, don't we? That the election commissioners would be interested in exploring that further. So that would be good. And then, of course, someone who's gotten an early ballot, let's say they election morning, 8 o'clock, they find out, I didn't mail my ballot back. What should they do? What can they do? They can't take it to their polling place, so what do they do?
But they can put it in a drop box. And the Election Commission is adding a 10th drop box, and it is going to be a drive-up drop box. The others you have to get out of your car, walk up to the box and put it in, but this is going to be a drive-up that's going to be on Davenport Street between 114th and 115th. It's just a block from the Election Commission office. So they could do a drive-up drop box, but they're going to have them in the drop box by 8 o'clock because there are election workers who will be waiting by each drop box to pick up any ballots in those boxes at exactly 8 o'clock.
8 p.m.
8
at
p.m.
night when the polls close.
When the polls close, yes.
And it's critical that you sign that envelope as you return it.
Yes, there's an outer envelope for your
Yes.
ballot that you have to sign as the voter on there. Okay, services on Election Day that the League provides, and we've already talked about rides to the polls, but Maryanne, do you want to mention again those, if someone needs a ride to the polls, the 3 different numbers that we had there?
As soon
contacts
as I
for that.
find the paper. Excuse me. We have the Urban League of Nebraska, and that phone number is 402-575-0144. And we also have Heartland Workers Center, and I think Urban League might be a little more north and Heartland south, but 402-933-6095. And then finally, www drives to vote, and that will be Warren Buffett or some of his designated best friends, I'm sure, will be looking for people to give rides to as well.
On Ollie Trolley.
Well, here's
On Ollie the Trolley,
Here's
yes.
one, and we may need, well, let's see if we have anyone who can answer this one. This person says, is it legal to have an early voting party? I was thinking of inviting friends to my house with their ballots, but don't know if that's okay.
There's no reason why you can't. For many of us who have relatives who are disabled in one way or another, who have problems filling out ballots, have frequently helped our parents or other people fill out ballots, either at the polling place or at home. In fact, that's one good reason why we do vote by mail, is for people who have some type of disability and need extra help and time. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't. Remember, your ballot is private to you. If you care to keep it that way, it need not be. You don't publish how you're voting when you're in the polling place, but if you do it at home, there's no one to tell you can't.
Okay, that answers that one. How about the league, and as far as us providing services for the voter on election day? Will there be someone answering our phone in our league office to help with any voter questions?
We do have people at the league office, and they can look up online to find out where you're supposed to go to vote if you're trying to find your polling place, and can give you various directions that way.
Okay, and our league office number is 402-344-3701. Okay, and then also want to give that number again for the Election Commission office. You can call there on election day as well and get help and information.
And there are a number of people there who are picking up the phone,
Yeah.
so that's a good place.
402-444-8683.
And then in Sarpy County, the number is 402-593-2167.
Okay, and same thing across the state, polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 8th, Election Day.
And one thing that we learned from the Election Commission and from the people who do poll observation is one of the things that seems to be most frustrating for voters is they've gone to the wrong polling place. Right. And so be really careful, make sure that you've got the right information about you're going to the right polling place. You know, some people think, well, I work here and this is close, so I'm just going to go vote there, but that's not their polling place. So if they stand in line for 10 minutes waiting to get up to the table, find out that they're not registered in that polling place, it's going to be a source of frustration. So it's always good to check your yellow card that you've gotten in the mail, and also be sure that you've checked online if you have questions.
Now the poll workers will assist voters in getting them to the correct voting.
They will direct
place.
them to the correct polling place.
Okay.
But it's frustrating because you've driven there, you've gotten out, you've gotten in, you've waited in line, so it's good to avoid that frustration by making sure ahead of time you know you're going to the right place.
And if you do go there and you think that you really are registered, that's your right polling place, that's where that provisional ballot can kick in. That you can request a provisional ballot and vote that way.
Right.
And again, if you think that there's some issue, there's that Nebraska Specific Reform Election Protection Hotline, 402-904-5191, and they will be glad to help with any problems that you encounter at the polls. And problems should be reported to the Election Commissioner's office as well, calling there.
And the Election Commission is very concerned about having fair elections, and everybody has an opportunity to vote. So they will be open to hearing any concerns.
Okay, great. So, anything else about Election Day or voting, Ann or Maryanne, that you want to add here?
Just be a voter.
You know, I do have one thing that I just want to clarify for I've run into this sometimes when we've been doing voter registration. Someone will say, I don't want to register to vote because then I might have to be on a jury and do jury duty. And I asked the election commissioner about this, and those two things are not tied together. They do not pull juries from the registered voter pool. So that's not a concern that you have to have if that's keeping you away from registering.
Okay, that's good. That's good information to know.
And just encourage everyone who's registered to look for your postcard that's going to come in the mail the end of August, where you're given the opportunity to tear off a part of it and send it back and vote by mail.
Okay. And the voting by mail couldn't be easier with the drop boxes. There'll be 10 with the drive-up drop box this time.
Or a single postage stamp.
Right, and that's the new thing. The reason they can do a single postage stamp this time is that they've come up with a way to be able to fold the ballot and put it in an envelope, so that makes they don't have to have the oversized envelope that takes more postage. And maybe we should go through that just one more time on the early voting. You get your ballot, you fill out your ballot with a pen or ballpoint pen, black or blue ink, and then you fold your ballot, put it in the envelope, and then you are required to sign the outside. Is that that's the way it works?
And that's why your vote is private. They're verifying your signature that you're the voter, but nobody is seeing who you voted for.
Okay, and then
they're opening the envelope and just putting it right into the ballot box to be counted.
The ballot box. Okay. And I think some people have asked in Nebraska, we, unlike some other states, we do not use voting machines unless it's the assistive device for disabilities.
Right.
But we use paper ballots and optical scanners, and we're kind of ahead of the game, I think, on that score, because there's an ability to do a recount if necessary, which with some voting machines you cannot do. So. Okay. One other question: what does a voter do if you spoil a ballot, whether at home or in the polling booth? You've made a mistake, and what do you do?
You bring it to the table where the poll worker is and say, I made this mistake. They will give you a different ballot to complete.
And if it happens to you with a mail-in ballot, you call the Election Commission office and have them guide you through what you need to do. Okay.
One thing, as we have a few minutes here, we're almost to the end of our show. Have we gotten any questions, or we've asked voters what other services the League could provide to help them? And as you're doing voter registration, any of you, or out and educating the community, have we gotten any comments from people as to what they'd like to see us do to help them even more with voting and voter education? Any thoughts on that?
I haven't heard anyone say what they'd like us to do more of. What I've heard is a lot of comments about how helpful the voter's guide is when they understand that it's not a voter's guide that's saying vote for this person. It's just information that we've gathered of the candidate's position so they can make up their own minds. It's kind of a sigh of relief that I don't have to have people telling me who to vote for.
Okay.
And I've heard students say, why don't we have a concert or something at the university or at Metro Community College that night for all those people that came to vote? There ought to be a celebration.
Okay. So that kind of fits in with your toolkit and Celebrate Democracy Day, so that might be a good thing to do.
And I've heard a number of people who are delighted to know about ex-felons who can vote, given the time that they have to be off paper. But people who identified a grandson or a neighbor or themselves, in a couple of cases that I've experienced. But I think that's a story that we are really looking hard to bring to the public. The League is, and other organizations are as well. But everybody that's watching this show could do that too. It's to me, it's a real injustice that people who can vote don't know that they can vote. So you can be a part of that solution.
The other thing you can do is, be a voter, but also take your kids. If you have kids, and model for them what voting is all about and how you made decisions, showing them how it works so that when they get to be voting age, it's not new. They're ready, they're anxious, they're really looking forward to being a voter.
That's a good point. And you can also, since there are sample ballots, the Election Commission provides on the website, if you want to see exactly what your ballot will look like before you get there, you could print one off and give it to your children and let them fill out a ballot. They can't put it in the ballot box, but they can they can certainly fill it out at home and just have that experience. And
If
then,
you have teenagers, they could do research for you on candidates. They could
Yeah.
Google people and give you some information.
there we go. And Ann, when we do some voter education, we do have a child-sized voting booth that we let kids practice, right?
That's something Carolyn developed, and they vote for their favorite candy.
The favorite candy, okay, rather than the candidate. Well, any last minute things before we sign off here? An hour went by quickly, didn't it, on this show? So, well, we want to encourage our voters to continue to watch the forums, look for our voters guide. If you need help from the league at all, call us. We're available, look at our website. And for Ann and Maryanne and Joanna and Carolyn, I'm Geri Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and the candidates. And on Election Day, November 8th, go vote Omaha.